Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be a currently reading and TBR, to be read, for this year. And I'm just going to go straight into what I'm currently reading and then head into what I would like to read this year. So I'm currently reading Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerry Manis-Calico. I'm really sorry if I butchered the name, but I'm enjoying this book so much, and the more I read it, the more I want to read it. And then reality sets in and I'm like, the more I read this, I'm actually going to finish it, and I really don't want to. But this book is so up my alley. It was like it was written for me. So I remember being in like year 4 or year 5 and the topic was Victorians, and I remember touching upon Jack the Ripper, and I was so like fascinated by this man, he was probably a man, who committed these crimes and got away with it. And you know, 100 years or more than 100 years on, we have still no definitive proof that it was anybody, and there's so many suspects that it could be any one of them. But I'm really enjoying this. The protagonist, Audrey Rose, is an assistant at her uncle's laboratory, I guess, and he gets the victims and dissects them, I guess. I think that's the right word to use. And he basically has the victims come in after their untimely death, and certain events unfold, and there's a big plot twist, which I'm very excited about reading more about tonight. And I started reading it about a week ago, and I've been reading it every day, whether it be a chapter or a couple of chapters, and I just love it so much, and I really don't want to finish it. So definitely go out and buy this. If you're a lover of Victorians and Jack the Ripper, you know what I mean, then get this because it's just amazing. I'm also currently reading, I say currently reading, I haven't picked it up for about 2-3 months, since my second video is Jane Eyre, and it is a reread, and I loved it so much the first time I read it. I didn't read this edition, I read the Penguins Classics. Completely fell in love with it so much that I cried when I finished it, because it was the first proper book I'd read, and I got so into it that I'd be at work and I'd be thinking about, oh, you know, this could happen, or, you know, what could happen with, you know, Jane and Mr. Rochester now, and I just loved it so much. So I decided to read it again. And the first time I read it, it was with an audiobook, but this time I'm just casually reading through it. And I'm currently on chapter 8, and I just love it. So I really need to like pick it up and read it, because it's just amazing. And I visited the Bronte parsonage where they lived 200 years ago, and just completely fell in love with their lives, and the fact that they weren't, the books that her and her sisters, that Charlotte and her sisters wrote, weren't written under the names of Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, Anne Bronte. They were all under pseudonyms, and I just find that almost ludicrous how they had to hide their identity just to do what they were called to do and to do what they enjoyed doing. And they had to kind of hide behind a veil of essentially a man to write a book. Times have changed, and I'm glad they have, but I'm glad that Charlotte wrote Jane Eyre. And if you ever get a chance to visit the parsonage where they grew up, please do, because you won't regret it. So now I'm going to go into my TBR for this year. I set my Goodreads challenge to 12, so that is 1 book a month for a year, and maybe hopefully I'll be able to surpass that and read more, but I thought, baby steps. And one book a month is doable because I've read Stalking Jack the Ripper, you know, half the book in a week, so it's easily done. So the first book on my TBR is The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor, and it is an interesting spin on the game Hangman, and it says, none of us agreed on the exact beginning. Was it when we started drawing the chalk figures, or when they started to appear on their own? Was it the terrible accident, or when they found the first body? So it's an interesting take on the game Hangman, which I saw a conspiracy theory video about. I think it's classed as a conspiracy, where it's like, this is like one of the first games that children play, and it's about hanging. That's a whole other video. I'll leave that to Shane Dawson. So I look forward to how she has created kind of a backstory, or created a story surrounding the childhood game. It still baffles me how it's a childhood game. The next book is Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig, and it's a self-help book, and as someone who struggles, who has mental health issues, which they come in waves and whatever, but I'm hoping to get some tips and tricks and, you know, ways to deal with different feelings and emotions that, you know, everybody has some sort of mental health. I don't like saying the word problem, but everybody has some sort of a mental health issue, and in some way, shape or form, and I'm hoping to aid myself with the help of this book. And so many other like celebrities that I've heard of and love are, you know, have read this book, such as Stephen Fry, Nigella Lawson. So they've all read it and praise it, and I hope to like it. So the third book on my TBR is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and she is the sister of Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Jane Eyre. I started reading this at the beginning of last year, but I couldn't get into it, and I was reading it with two of my friends, and they both were ploughing through it, and I barely made it to like maybe the second, third, fourth chapter. I just couldn't get into it. So I don't know if it was the audiobook that I was listening to whilst reading along, or what it was, but I'm going to try reading this just with the book alone and hopefully get into it. And we've all heard of the song Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. It's a great classic song, and I really hope I fall in love with this book, because I've heard so many like rave reviews about it, but from other YouTubers, and I hope to feel the same way about it. It follows the love story of Heathcliff and Catherine, and I just want to fall in love with it. The next book on my TBR is On This Day in History by Dan Snow, and I got this book back in November, and I was like, oh, I can't wait until the new year because I can start reading this book, and I haven't even started it yet. So each page is a different day of the year, and it says what happened on that day, which I think is such a genius idea, and I always love seeing on, like, when it pops up on Instagram or Time Hop or Twitter about, you know, on this day this person was born, or on this day this monumental thing happened. So I need to read through this, you know, as we're already nearly at the end of February. So the fifth book on my TBR is a book that I've had for quite a while, 8 years or so, and it is Charles Dickens' A Life, and it is written by Claire Tomalin, and it's basically a biography on Charles Dickens. And I started reading it, but it's quite a lengthy book. So I started reading this book a while ago, but when I moved out, I didn't take all the books that are on the family bookshelf because I kind of forgot, and this was one of them. And my parents moved to Scotland, so it wasn't just like I could pop around and grab a book. I really want to read this because I read Oliver Twist for Classics-a-thon last year, and I really enjoyed it, reading Oliver Twist. I watched the film, the 1968 musical, which is one of my favourite films of all time. So I read the book, and it was interesting to actually read the book, and so much more happened in the book. So to read about the author that wrote one of the books that I love and a film that I love would be kind of an insight to his mind and why he wrote about what he wrote about. I believe his book, David Copperfield, is semi-autobiographical too. So I look forward to reading this. And maybe this is a book that I don't read just this on its own. Maybe it'll be one that I go back to and maybe take me a little bit longer than a month to read, because it's quite big. The 6th book on my TBR is probably the most controversial book that is on my TBR, and it is The Sins of Jack Saul, and it is the true story of Dublin Jack and the Cleveland Street scandal. And he was basically the most notorious, it says here, Jack Saul was the most notorious male prostitute in Victorian London, and he was born in Dublin and moved to London, and I got this on my trip to London last summer, and that's probably a whole other video, but the story behind me getting this book is me and my boyfriend walked past Waterstones, and my boyfriend he hates reading, so for me to ask, can we go into Waterstones, he was like, really? But then he saw that it had a cocktail bar at the top, and we went in there and got very merry in a bookshop, which was very strange. And I bought this book after. So we were tipsy when I was buying this, and I would have bought it whether I drunk or not, but I'm looking forward to learning about Jack Saul and learning about him and his life in the late Victorian era. And it will be one of the first LGBT books that I have read. So being gay myself, I don't really know where to start with LGBT, and it's such a wide genre and such a diverse genre as well. Like, you've got like the lesbian fiction and non-fiction, and the gay and the bisexual and the transgender and the queer, and I would like to read more LGBT books, but I just don't know where to start. And I'm guessing this is one of the best places to start. And for it to be in the Victorian era is kind of a best of both worlds for me. You know, I relate to LGBT youth, and Jack was that LGBT youth. It happened in the Victorian era, and it's the best of both worlds. So I look forward to reading this, Another book on my TBR, which I'll probably read first, is, I just spoke about this on my unboxing video that I posted. I don't know when this video will be going out, but I just posted it. It's The Secret Diaries of Anne Lister. And to cut a very long story short, I first heard about this book about a week ago, and Lucy the reader was reading it, and I asked her, you know, I didn't know that this was a thing, that someone had decoded her diaries and made it into a book. So I literally had to get myself a copy, and I did. It arrived Saturday. I did a unboxing video, so if you want to read that, then it'll be in below. I'm looking forward to reading this because I said in that video that I find it easy to read diary entries and letters because it's digestible, and you know, you can quickly read, you know, a diary entry quickly and then go back to work, or you can read, you know, in a stint or something. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. And this book would fall under LGBT too, because she was an open lesbian in the 19th century. So I'm looking forward to reading another LGBT book along with this, which is obviously The Sins of Jack Saul. So I look forward to reading both of these. And if you guys know any other interesting and good LGBT books, then please leave it in the comments below, because I definitely want to read more about, you know, books that I can relate with and I have experienced firsthand. So if you do know of any books, then please leave it in the comment below. I recently started my own bookish account over on Twitter, so if you want to follow me there, we can, you know, talk about all things book. We can give each other recommendations and we can just, you know, talk about books. So if you want to do that, then please go ahead and I will follow back. Thank you guys for watching, and I promise I'll be more consistent. I know I keep saying that, but I'm just getting to grips with it all. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you later.